In this, the third video of Chapter 4, we're going to be talking about the role of the state. Now, in the last section, we talked about a number of issues regarding industrialization. In this section, we're going to talk about why the state felt it necessary, or rather the government felt it necessary, for them to be in control of the process. Well, a couple of interesting things to note here. One is, if we think back to that time in Indian history, India was in complete disarray and people were kind of all over the place and not really clearly focused on what it is they were supposed to do with themselves. So the government felt in order for our economy to really get going, we need to be heavily involved. So the government decided to step in and they wanted to make sure that the vast majority of the production process was as a result of firms that they were in control of, or firms that they were managing in a very specific way. And the idea was that if they were able to control the industry, then they would be able to fix three of the key things that were important to them. First of all, they felt that there was a lack of capital in the private entrepreneurial realm. They could fix that. Secondly, they felt that there was a lack of incentive amongst individuals to start their own businesses, so they could also affect that by being involved in the start of businesses themselves. And finally, there was a socialistic pattern of society. And what this means was the government was very concerned about the way wealth was going to be gathered. So let's take a look at each of these individually. The first one, the lack of capital with private entrepreneurs. Well, there wasn't either a sufficient market for capital or a significant amount of capital available. So there were few players who were willing to lend money to small business people who wanted to start their own businesses. And even if they were firms who were interested in doing that, they didn't have enough money to do so because the risk of lending at that time was quite high, as India was in a very significant state of flux. Secondly, as you can clearly imagine, because India was in a state of flux and there was a lot of change going on and capital wasn't really available, the number of people who were willing to invest in the market or who wanted to take that entrepreneurial risk was very, very low. And that entire phenomenon can be summed up very nicely by a simple diagram. So on this diagram, at the top of the diagram, we have this low inducement to invest. It means people were not motivated to invest, which then led to low demand for goods in the market. Then because there was low demand in the market, firms would not make a lot of money, so there was a low level of income to be had. Because there was a low level of income, people didn't have money to invest, so which would then lead to a low level of investment. And because there was a low level of investment, this then led to a low inducement to further invest. So this cycle was what was really at the heart of the problems here at that time. So very simply, because there was a low inducement to invest, it led to a low demand. Because there was a low demand, that led to low income. Because there was a low income, that naturally led to low investment, and that further fed into this low inducement to invest. Now, finally, the last of the three things here in this section that we're going to talk about is the socialistic pattern of society. Now, the government was really worried about one thing, and what they were worried about was when the economy started going, if this growth was in the hands of a few entrepreneurs, then the primary objective of them would probably have been, actually, it would have been just wealth creation. And wealth creation means that only a few people would have become very, very rich. So the government felt for them to have a better control of things in the society and have society operate in a way they would rather, they decided instead of allowing the market to run freely, if the government intervened in the market and set up corporations with the purpose of industrialization, then they could maybe affect the outcome in the market. Whereas in a market totally free, the primary motivation would have been wealth creation. A few people would have been very, very rich. But if the government stepped in, instead of worrying about wealth creation, they could focus on job creation. And as a result, they could plow lots and lots of those profits back into the market to generate more jobs and have more job creation. So the primary pattern here, or the primary goal of the government, was to ensure that job creation could occur, and the way that would exist is if they were directly involved in the market.